Welcome to The Mountain Gardener with your host, Ken Lane. Gardening can be challenging, but with Ken's tips, tricks, and local advice, you'll reap huge rewards. Now welcome your host, Ken Lane.
And welcome to this week's edition of The Mountain Gardener, your host, Ken Lane, here every week talking about the landscapes of northern Arizona. And we finally, I think it's going to be summer, and then it's not summer. I think it's going to be summer, and then it's not summer. I'm not talking about the calendar. I know it's been summer for a week. I meant your plants, your gardens. And so some things have been slow coming out of the gates. The summer lovers do not like this year. They're like 3 weeks behind for some reason. But finally, my Catalpa is starting to bloom. The desert willows went down to go visit some friends in Skull Valley. The desert willows are starting to bloom all along the highways. Dewey, Humboldt, Cordes Junction, they're in bloom all out there. The chase trees, or vitex, have started to bloom around town. So finally, some of those summer things that really showcase or highlight the summer season, it's finally warm enough for them. They like it in that mid 80s to 90s. That's their sweet spot, and that's the time to plant one. If you were to plant a summer-loving grape, a vitex, a desert willow, a Catalpa, any of those summer-loving plants, in the spring, you'd have to be really careful not to overwater them because they would be prone to drown. They're sitting there hibernating, not using water, and they're just sitting there looking at you, waiting for it to be warm. Finally, it warms up, and now the ground is starting to dry out faster, which is good for them. These are generally drought-hardy, low-water, low-care user kind of plants. And finally, they're warm enough where they can go, okay, I can go ahead and start growing now. And so right after they're pushing their flowers and their new leaf growth, they also start to root. So it's a good time to be planting things like Rosa Sharons and Crape Myrtles. And there's a whole series of summer-blooming plants that have hit come into the garden center. Whole nother series of roses. We just got a whole nother series of shrub and carpet roses in the garden center. It's a great time for roses to go in the ground because they really appreciate the summer. In fact, if you fertilize them right now, they would actually start your established roses out there in the yard. If you were to fertilize them right now, water that food in, they would start to bud up, and within 3-4 weeks, they would be in full glorious bloom. If there's any spent flowers, just cut the flowers off, fertilize them, and woof, you can almost count on it. Within 30, 40 days, full, beautiful bloom. In fact, at the farm, what we do, if we want to stage a rose to come into bloom for Mother's Day or for 4th of July or for whatever the holiday is, we're going to feature this one thing. We'll prune them back pretty hard. We'll shape them. We'll fertilize them 45 days before the event. And usually those plants, if the weather's right, there's not a bunch of cloud cover. There's some variables because this is farming. But within 45 days, they are in full, just covered flowers. If you've got a party or a wedding or a corporate event, and you want your backyard to be over the top, especially your roses, cut those things back, take all the spent flowers off, 45 days before the event, fertilize it with the all-purpose plant food. This is a 744 natural fertilizer, but the cottonseed meal on that makes everything bloom and blossom better. 45 days prior, and you can almost count on them. It's just like clockwork. And so that's some insider tips I can give you. This is the last weekend of June. We need it to get in the 90s. We need to have this heat, this high pressure system over us, because that's what draws or woos the clouds up from Mexico. This monsoonal moisture that comes in this way. We'll need 2-3 weeks of that. All of a sudden you can count on the rain. Before the rains come, I cannot emphasize this enough, especially for you new folks. You're just new to the area. You just don't know how to work with the environment yet. This is a cycle that's going to happen every year that you live here. There's this monsoonal rain pattern that comes in July. You really need to do 2 things, maybe 3. Yeah, you just have to do 2 things. One, you have to fertilize now before the rains come. All the food you gave back in the spring, you've now flushed that out. The plants have used it. You've been watering. It's washed all that fertilizer out of the ground. You need to replenish that. And if you do that, you'll have this whole nother set of growth for your shade trees. You have more shade, more foliage. You have more roses coming out of your rose. Anything that blooms, you'll have your lilacs that bloomed 2-3 months ago. Now they're starting to set buds. You'll have more buds and larger buds by giving them that summer food. Your container plants, your vegetables, they're going to need to be replenished, that food. These are heavy feeders to bloom. A hanging basket that's in full color needs to be replenished with some good, strong, like steak and potatoes kind of food to encourage it to grow even more. Potato vines, your wave petunias, your calipricoas, these trailing long tendrils of flowers, they'll need that food. Fertilize now through the middle of July. Sometimes it looks, I don't know when the monsoons will hit, just now through middle of July is your window to fertilize, and fertilize with specifically all-purpose plant food, a 744 fertilizer. You're going to have to come to Waters to get it because it's one that I made for here, for the mountains of Arizona. But boy, does it ever work. Then pray for the monsoons to hit. Just have them come in with that afternoon rain, and wow, things just take off. Now, I mentioned there's 2 things you have to do. One was food. 2, you just have to keep the weeds at bay. These summer weeds will be the worst. This is when goat head, this is this low, cute ground cover. But it's only an inch off the ground, but when you lift it up, there's literally 100 of these thorny seeds that just want to go through your foot, and the dogs limp around. It pops balls for your kids' bicycle tires. It's a nasty weed. It only comes back by seed. It's an annual, a true annual. Never comes back from the root. Always comes back from the seed. Keep the seed from germinating, and you won't have goat head up and down the driveway or on the fence line or in the backyard taking over the rocks. You need to put weed and grass stopper down before the monsoons hit. Weed and grass stopper is it's a granular, like your foods. You spread it out and the rains come, and it keeps the seed from germinating. It does not allow seed to come up in your yard. And it doesn't affect your current established trees or shrubs. You can put it underneath your cherry trees, underneath your roses, in between your flower beds. You can put it down, and it does not work like a weed and feed. Don't use that. Whatever you do, you're no longer in weed and feed country. It's at every box store, every mart, every drugstore, every hardware store. There's a pallet of it right out front. Weed and feed. It's for grass. If you put weed and feed out underneath your trees and your shrubs, it can kill the tree and the shrubs. The weed and grass stopper does not do that. It's very selective to seed. If it's already a weed coming up, already have dandelions, does not affect it. It's not going to affect, only affects the seed, keeps the seed from coming. Dandelions will be terrible the second the rains come. Your goat head, horehound, there's this whole series of nasty weeds that grow really fast. They're really obnoxious. I mean, they grow faster than your spring weeds, and they hit right as the monsoons come. If you know that's going to happen, put the weed and grass stopper at the same time you're putting your food down, and away you go. Those are the 2 things all of us must be doing. I'm putting mine down now. If your trees are stressed, your shrubs are stressed, your seedlings just aren't taking, you just aren't seeing the growth that you want. Your landscape's all new. You want it to root out so it establishes faster. For those folks, if you got stressed out trees, shrubs, grass, perennials, also add humic acid, Humic, humic acid. It's a granular again. You spread it out on those things. Put it underneath the drip line of the things that are off color. Yours aren't blooming, but your neighbors are. You know what's stress. It just doesn't look right. It's dropping leaves. It's turning yellow instead of green. You know what stressed is. Give it humic. And what humic does, it feeds the microbes in the soil so it becomes alive. So your plants go, whoa, something's going on. Wow, this is great. Look at this. Everything's growing. I should root out more. And you just need more roots underneath that plant, especially if they're stressed, and it'll recover. It'll green up and make it go again. So food, weed and feed stopper, and humic acid, all three before the middle of July. That's the making for a really good landscape. Be right back.
You've been listening to The Mountain Gardener with Ken Lane, owner of Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Join him every week for timely garden advice right for the gardens. Visit Ken where he can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
Hi, Waters with the plants of the week and our kaleidoscope Abelia.
The longest blooming of shrubs, late spring, the entire bush is covered with pink flowers that continue to show off all season.
A compact evergreen that is frost, drought, and heat hardy and deer proof.
This shrub shines in a kaleidoscope of multicolored foliage that sparkles all the time, all for just $34.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love to garden, they love to shop.
Some things are just better together.
July is the best time to fertilize with all-purpose plant food from Waters.
But pair the all-purpose with humic acid, and it's a 1-2 punch of garden power.
Humic acid gives your soil organic matter that helps plants' roots receive water and nutrients.
So it makes fertilizer work even better.
Like salt and pepper.
Coffee and donuts.
And hey, you and me.
Aw, thanks, Ken.
All-purpose plant food and humic acid better together, and only at Waters Garden Center.
You've been listening to Ken Lane, the Mountain Gardener. Green thumbs learned while working in the Family Garden Center. Now welcome back to the Mountain Gardener.
And we are back with Lisa Waters Lane in the studio. My favorite, my lake buddy.
Lake buddy.
Yeah. So we're going up to Lake Powell, taking the family on a houseboat and decompress. What I love about Page, Arizona is for people that are crazy busy, highly plugged in, and you just have to get stuff done. You're like a cyborg. You got something in your ear, something on your hip, something just connected to your phone, downloads and backs up on your servers and your laptops and your desktops. And you go up there and there ain't none of that. Because you can't. Verizon barely works. There is no Wi-Fi. And if you can find something, it is crazy slow. It's more frustrating than it's worth. Just go, it can wait.
It's true. It's kind of scary sometimes. You feel like, oh my goodness, what's happening that I'm missing? But yeah, you definitely chillax when you're up there.
Yes, you do. It's relaxing. For busy people, that's a good thing. So anyway, this segment, other than vacations, we should answer some gardening questions because I know the hatch just happened out in Prescott Valley with grasshoppers. I know blister beetles are out. I know the weeds are coming up. I know the new foliage coming out on plants. It's just amazing. It's really great. Yeah. The harvest is on. We've got our first tomatoes. There's got to be a lot of good questions.
Well, there is. Definitely. Always good questions. And you're right. The insects are like taking over the world this week.
Except with people I've seen quite a few specimens coming in going, oh, there's another. You can see them when they come out of the car. They got their little baggie. They're coming in going, I'm going to find out what this is. Water's going to help me. Put it underneath the microscope. I want to tell me. And they want us to name it exactly. It's a beetle. It's bad. Well, can you know what variety? I'm going, no, it's eating your roots. It's a larva stage. It's a moth. I'm not sure. It's on your apple tree. It's got to be codling moth. I don't know the exact variety of codling moth. Here, this will kill it.
Yeah. Are grasshoppers normally out? Is it early or am I just off?
You're just off.
I'm just off.
My dear, that's what I love about you. You're just off.
It seems like it's too early for them to be in, but this year's gone by so fast. I just can't keep track of everything.
I think it's just. In fact, if anything, it's maybe a week or two delayed. Normally it's right at summer, just a little bit before. Yeah. Now we're a week after, so they're about on track. I mean, they come up when they decide.
Right.
I saw a 4-inch, maybe 5-inch grasshopper in the garden center. I was trying to chase him down with my pruners, going, hold still, whoo! And he'd jump off, going, hold still.
Those are the big ones that have migrated in.
Correct, yeah. Okay. They're not dangerous.
Yeah.
They're here simply to lay eggs. That is it. They're going to cause an issue a month or two down the road. It's the fry stage. The hatch just happened.
Itty bitty guys.
Little tiny guys. They come at you by the bazillion, thousands. and they devour as they're growing. They've got a ferocious appetite. When they're large like that, they really don't need to eat that much. They go long periods without food. They're mainly there to make whoopee and lay more eggs and find a mate and cause you grief down the road.
So on the big guys, because there's really not a good, because I know Nolo bait doesn't work on them.
It
right?
does.
It does?
Yeah, it'll affect the eggs. So they'll eat it, but they won't die because they're so big they'll die. It's just Nolo bait, and we should explain what that is.
Yeah.
That's a spore that we've laced inside a wheat, and so it's a virus. And so they eat that, and the virus goes to, it's kind of like the black plague for grasshoppers, and it goes to the population, affects them. Well, when a large guy eats it, they won't die immediately. They'll die eventually. It could be a month, 2 weeks down the road, but all the eggs that they lay, every one of them is infected, which is great. So if they do hatch, they probably won't, but if they do hatch, they'll come up infected, so they'll spread that plague or that virus through the population. Doesn't affect chickens, doesn't affect your kids, doesn't affect dogs, doesn't affect birds, just grasshoppers and crickets. Only no lizards, if something eats, your cats eat a dead grasshopper, doesn't affect them. Only grasshoppers. That's a very selective biological control, which is fantastic. You can't beat that. That's like the ideal way to go after it. The key with Nolo bait is get it at the fry stage. Feed that to the young population. They'll die immediately, right away, and then it spreads really quickly through the youngsters. It spreads through the pop faster. So if you got it, and then also I just helped a customer just yesterday. It was what seems like an awfully big bag. I just live in a regular sized lot out in Quailwood. I'm going, well, use half of it around the property line. And then what I do is I'm generous with I'm helping my neighbors out. I kind of chuck a little bit over there because it affects them. And then I always hold about half of it in reserve because there will be more grasshoppers. And so I'll come back at them in like a month and spread a little bit more around the outer edges and help my neighbors.
Plus, if it gets wet, doesn't it lose? You want it to be dry.
You want it to be dry. It doesn't lose its effectiveness. It keeps going. It's just with our monsoon rains, when it starts to rain here anytime, it's like a deluge, so it gets buried mainly. It's in the ground where they can't get to it. So little tiny piles around. It can get wet just fine, but if it gets washed away, you don't benefit.
Yeah.
You put all this out there for down the wash to benefit, not you.
Okay, so save some in reserve when you put it out. Definitely. Okay, well, that kind of covers grasshoppers and Nolo bait, but that's always, every year it comes up because they are ferocious. But Doug wants to know what's wrong with his flame maple. The leaves have become almost yellow, really bright green to yellow. Still has the dark green veins in it. Oh, okay. But he wants to know what he did wrong, if he did something wrong, and how can he correct it.
Sure. So anytime you see yellow leaves, it's one of two things. Always one of two things. It's either a lack of iron or lack of magnesium. That's the symptom, but what caused that's the real question. And it's almost always that the plant around the roots, the soil around the roots is too wet or too heavy. And so you as you water, the pH starts to creep up and it goes off the charts to where your pH gets too high, and so it locks up all those minerals that are there, but the plant can't get to it because the pH is too high. So you need to lower the pH and then fertilize it with some iron kind of stuff. It's probably iron deficiency, almost guaranteed. Here's what to do. Come in right away or it's going to stay yellow, and once it gets programmed to do that, it just does that all the time. Give it two things. One, humic acid. What that is, humic, H-U-M-I-C, humic. It's a granular, looks like coffee grounds or something. You spread that around there, it lowers the pH, makes it more acidic. So now the fertilizer you're going to put on, all-purpose plant food, the 744, it's got iron in it, it's got food, it'll green it up, but without the humic, it's not going to green it up enough. And so you kind of want to do both products at the same time, lower the pH and fertilize it. Also the cottonseed meal in the all-purpose plant food. That's also acidic. So you kind of got a double whammy there to lower that pH, and it'll green up within days. I mean, it'll be amazing. Get that with a little bit of monsoonal rain later this month. Oh, it'll green up. You got plenty of time left. It'll be okay.
Okay, good answer. Pat would like to know what's going on with her green beans. So she keeps planting green beans. They start to emerge.
Oh, yeah.
And if they get like an inch or so high, they get chewed off at almost at ground level.
Yep.
So she wants to know what it is and how do you take care of it?
I thought it was going to be damping off, so it's staying too wet and the seedling falls over. But eating off, it's almost just one of two things. Quail, they love beans, especially seedlings. So it's like their favorite thing. If you've got a covey of quail running around, they're eating your beans. Put some bird netting or some fencing or something to keep them off. Once they're big enough, they won't bother them. But you need to get them to that mature stage, about a foot or two off the ground. Then you're good. You can take all that fencing off. Probably a block, some cinder blocks, anything to raise some wood, get some bird netting, and then just put a 2x4 on top of that to kind of elevate it. Or it's field mice, voles, V-O-L-E. So they'll come and they also like to eat your seedlings. They'll come in little tiny mice about 2 inches long, scurry around at night. They go, oh, look, here's a bean. Hey, Joe, come over here. There's a whole bunch of beans over. Let's eat all these. They come in and they have dinner on you, and then you'll program them to keep coming at you. If you've got mice, they're a little more difficult because you can't fence them out. You're probably going to have to trap them and eliminate them, or you could live trap them, carry them around, and take them to
your neighbor's house.
Yeah, something bad. Take them over to the big box store. Release them over there.
Oh, that's harsh.
That's from Ken and Lisa, or your small business.
No, that's from
owner.
Ken.
But you're going to have to get a mouse trap, more than likely. It's either voles or quail. More than likely quail, because I've heard that story a couple times. Those are good questions this week. Okay, Ken and Lisa Lane and the Mountain Gardeners. Be right back.
You're listening to Ken Lane, a.k.a. the Mountain Gardener. Ken can be found throughout the week in Prescott at Waters Garden Center. Listen each week as he answers timely garden questions unique to mountain gardens. Gee, my flowers just bloom too much.
Said no one, ever. Hi, this is Ken at Waters. We had a crazy winter and everyone's ready for flowers in the garden.
Waters Flower Power is made specifically for Arizona that gives flowers that extra boost to burst into bloom.
It's an energy kick in the plants.
Get ready for roses that rule, peppers that pop, and tomatoes that triumph.
More power to the flowers with Flower Power at Waters Garden Center in Prescott. Hi, Waters, with the plants of the week and our summer love, Agastache.
A perennial that happily shrugs off summer heat in waves of tubular red flowers.
Exceptional heat tolerance, this hummingbird perennial draws pollinators close into the garden.
The minty fragrance keeps javelina, deer, and rabbits away, and these huge plants are just $39.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott. For people who love summer flowers, they love to shop.
You've been listening to The Mountain Gardener with local expert Ken Lane. Join the conversation every week as he answers timely garden questions. Email Ken a question directly from your phone to his desktop through the web at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Now welcome back your host, Ken Lane.
How do you plant a tree or a shrub or a vine? How do you do it in the mountains of Arizona? Let me just go over the 3 steps you need to really make that go, because some of you are working way too hard and you just don't need to do that. In a nutshell, you need 3 things whenever you plant. 4 if it's a tree. 1, you need a mulch, some sort of composted mulch. You need a food, because your soil has none, and you need root and growth, something to help it stimulate root growth, stabilize transplant shock. If it's trees, you need to stake it, especially for you folks up on the ridge lines. The wind can be ferocious up there. You need to stake it for just a year, then you can take those stakes off. So here's how I approach planting, let's say, a new shade tree. What I'll do is I'll from the patio, the deck, the angle I want to view it from, I'll go out there and I'll just place it in the yard where I think it would be best, and I'll come admire it from the living room or admire it from the deck or the bedroom, trying for privacy, whatever the reason, and I'll make sure I get it just right. So placement, you think it's right out in the yard, then you look out from an angle different and you're going, oh, I wish I'd moved it 4 feet over this way. Do it right the first time. Take the extra moment before you plant it. Now, when you're ready to plant Plants do not grow in rocks. They just don't. They need to have soil. So if you're up in the rock piles, now you may have to adjust it because you start digging a hole. There isn't any soil down there. You just have to move it around. You can jackhammer, but you're jackhammering rock. It doesn't help the plant. You can maybe create a little pocket, but then it will outgrow it. You really want to find a pocket of soil. Some of you out in the valley areas, it's solid clay with caliche. So you're going to have to really peck out some soil, get rid of that caliche layer. When you're digging your hole, the soil needs to be at least as deep as the roots, as the bucket, as the plant that you bought it in. It needs to be that deep. No deeper. You don't have to go down to China. There's nothing down there for plants to go after. All the roots are going to go down about 12 inches, hook a right or a left, and just start growing sideways. Because just underneath the soil, that's where the food, the topsoil, the moisture, it knows that's where the goodies are, and it's going for there. It knows there's no water down there. I mean, the water table in Chino Valley is, I think the first aquifer is 150 feet deep. The second one is 1,000. There's no way roots are going that deep. So it's going to go sideways and take advantage of the monsoonal rains or your irrigation, the drip systems. It knows that. Even ancient trees that have died and fallen over, the roots are maybe 3 feet deep, and then they just go sideways. They start turning around. They create this mat effect. Well, if you know that's how roots are going to grow, encourage it to do that. Just go as deep as the root as that container, and then go 3 times the width. So add a bucket on each side and make it kind of round. And then you want your sides not to be solid straight down. You want them to be kind of saucer shaped. So it's much easier to dig a wide hole than it is a deep hole. Now you're going to dig that soil out, put it in a bucket or on a tarp or just on the side of the container, side of the root planting hole. And now you want to filter out some of the yuck that's in there. Anything bigger than a golf ball. That is rocks, roots, bricks. I mean, I found a gun once planting down by the barn. Someone had lost it, way all rusted out and gross, but they just lost it in the mud. I dug it up. There it is. That needs to go away. It's no good. It doesn't help your plant grow. So filter that stuff out. You're left with some soil. You want to amend that dirt that you dug out, same depth, 3 times the width. You want to amend that with about 25% mulch to your soil. So you want to amend it so that we're trying to change the structure of the soil so it doesn't compact right back down. Or if it's in real sandy, crushed granite soil, it holds the moisture. That organic, the organic compost will hold the moisture around the roots. You're going to blend that together, about 1 shovel's mulch for 3 shovels of native earth. Blend that together, and that's what you use to backfill around the root ball. Before I plant the root, I'll tickle the feet underneath. I don't beat the root up very much. I just kind of try to spread the roots out just a little bit, especially at the bottom. That's about it. I don't rough it up very much. Before I put the plant, let's say it's a new maple tree or a new aspen, before I put it in the ground, I'll actually fill that hole up halfway with water. I'll have my hose there because I'm trying to hydrate the soil around my new root ball. Then I'll plant it in that mucky, wet soil, and I'll backfill that mixture of mulch and native soil around that, and I'll pack it down. Then I'll water it in. As I'm watering it, I will sprinkle some all-purpose plant food on top of that planting hole. The tree is all set, the shrub is all set. Sprinkle a handful of that all-purpose plant food, and I'll water it at the very end with Root and Grow. It's a rooting hormone. And that's kind of your 3 steps: mulch, food, root and grow, in a hole that's the same depth, 3 times as wide. Trees need to be staked, not against the trunk, but out about a foot on either side of the root ball. Just 2 stakes tied once. In between those stakes, you want the tree to move but not blow over. And that's how you plant. Come in, I've got a free guide. We created a one-page sheet. It shows you graphics, how much of each, how big the hole. It's free. We want you to be successful. Come in and ask for my free planting guide. Be right back.
The Mountain Gardener, your source for timely garden advice right for higher elevations. Guaranteed to make a difference in your yard this season. Hi, Lisa here with the Plants of the Week and our Cabernet Sauvignon grape finds.
One of the most widely recognized wine grapes, producing tasty red fruits and superior wine.
Yes, you can grow your own, and it doesn't take as many vines as you might think.
used to arch a walkway or shade a terrace, all for under $20. The grape harvest is simply a bonus.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love to make their own wine, they love to shop. Hi, Lisa with the finds of the week and our Forester feathergrass.
Dramatic bronze flower spikes start blooming in early summer and don't stop until well into next year.
The flowers are so light and airy, it's often referred to as feathergrass.
Growing to just hip-high, this dainty grass shows off enough to make a designer statement without being invasive, all for under $30.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love really pretty grass, they love to shop. You're listening to The Mountain Gardener with local expert Ken Lane. Mountain gardening is very rewarding, with a few Ken's tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts sure to turn your thumbs even greener. Now welcome back to The Mountain Gardener.
And we are back with Lisa Waters Lane in the studio. She comes each week and just shares her garden thoughts, garden opinions, what's going on in the gardens or the garden center, or just what can you be gardening with. She shares those ideas. So welcome back in the studio, Lisa.
Thank you.
So are you nervous? I mean, truly nervous about your new puppy drowning at the lake?
I am a little nervous. We bought her a life jacket. It's supposed to be for 5 to 15 pounds. We had her at the vet the other day. She only weighs 3 pounds.
3 pounds. It's a 10-week-old puppy. We were talking brand. It's still chewing on everything, teething. Cute as could be a baby schnauzer.
God,
so cute.
Curious. The thing is, she's so curious.
Yeah.
You know, I just have this fear of her going overboard. But we will keep an eye on her. There's enough of us around. We'll put
an arm floaty around her. We're just going to blow it up. One of the kids' arm floaties, put it around her. Probably that's bobblehead her right down under the water. She'd drown instantly. Have to take her to a beach. Kind of get used to the water, and then build some confidence, and then hopefully she grow. Feed her some more Wheaties so she fills out better. So her life vests for a 5-pound dog fits.
Right. Oh my God.
I'm a little nervous.
I
think she's going to love the boat.
I think so.
Because she loves the car. She loves going with you. She loves being there with you.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling she's going to be a great lake, boat, car travel dog.
I think so. When I talk to the breeders, they're like, "Oh yeah, they love to swim. They can out swim now." Hopefully, they weren't just telling me something.
Yeah, she'll buy it if you tell her this. Yeah. No, it seems to be the case. They just got those long legs. They got a turkey neck, so they stick up out of the water.
Right.
Yeah, it should be good. I'm excited.
We'll find out. Hopefully, we have good news next week to report.
So share some news with us from the garden. Well, right now it's heating up a little bit. We've had some really pretty cool temperatures, but now it's really starting to heat up a little bit. And those flowers and shrubs that like the heat, they are really starting to get a lot of new growth, and a lot of them are starting to bud, and some are even starting to bloom. I noticed our Catalpa. We had a gathering last weekend, and our Catalpa finally bloomed. Now, this is a mixture of a Catalpa with a desert willow, and you get this beautiful, perfectly shaped, drought-hardy, blooming tree. It's in full bloom with literally 1,000 blooms on it. It's crazy. But it seemed to be late. Normally it blooms in May. Well, now it's here the end of June. It's just starting to bloom because it has been so cool. A lot of those summer lovers, they haven't been happy at all. So now they should finally take off. Give those things a little bit of food now. Well, they'll really start to bloom and grow. And that's good. So we're covering those plants that maybe we can play in the heat with.
You bet. And of course, I think the king of them all is actually the Crape Myrtle.
Okay.
Just because it's not going to do a whole lot while it's cool, but I noticed ours at the garden center are really pushing a lot of new growth. And a lot of them, their buds are set and they're starting to bloom. And the thing about Crape Myrtles is their blooms are just such bright colors. They are so dynamic. You can see them from yards away. You're like, oh, what's that blooming over there? And you get up to it and it's a Crape Myrtle. So definitely a beautiful plant to have in the yard. Definitely adds to the landscape. And the ones that we have some really unique ones in, I'll just kind of cover them for you. So there's one called Dynamite, which is bright, like cherry red blossom to it. Green foliage, cherry red blossom. It's hard to find good reds sometimes. They're usually more orangey or pinky, but Dynamite has a really nice red look to it. The Plum Magic I really like because it has the foliage on it is darker. So it has that
almost
real
purple. Isn't
yeah,
it?
it's almost like a burgundy foliage to it. Plum Magic has a fuchsia colored blossom. So with that dark foliage and that bright, bright pink blossom, you just kind of go, wow, what is that? So very unique to have those kind of colorings together. Sunset Magic, another one that has a dark blossom to it. But the thing I like about it, it also gives you fall color. So the blossom on it is kind of a dark pink to it, but the fall color on your foliage actually turns more orangey red.
Oh, that's kind of neat. That kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
They bloom through fall. Crape Myrtles bloom now through fall into the year, but then to also have it bloom or starting to bloom and then or fading to bloom, whatever that is, and then go to fall color. That would be something. Normally they're just gold colored.
Right.
They have an orange. That would be really nice.
Really pretty. Zuni has a bright green
Classic,
leaf,
yeah.
and then it has a kind of a lavender blossom to it. Really pretty. And I think that one gets fairly good. The leaves on it are bigger than some of the others, so it really shows up out in the yard. There's one called Ruffled Red, which is really cool. It almost looks like a double blossom.
The flower is ruffled, not the foliage.
No,
I was thinking the foliage.
The flower.
Oh, I haven't seen that. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's really kind of cool. I don't think it's like a true double, but it has that look to it.
Okay.
Really unique looking. And then there's one that has a coral blossom to it, kind of an orangey blossom. So any color that you want, we could probably find.
I had
one
no idea you had that many Crape Myrtles in stock. So I know we got Crape Myrtles in that we've been unloading trucks and displaying the summer varieties of, Crape Myrtles and Rose of Sharon. All I never realized, what is that, like 8 varieties?
There's probably at least 8.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't name every variety we had.
I can say that we've got 2 in the backyard, and they're starting to really actively grow. We got the Plum Magic. And it's right there in the north side where it was just buried in snow for like a long time.
Yeah.
It died back to the ground, and now it's already emerged. Oh, it's knee high or more, so it's a shrub form. So it's a survivor.
Right.
But the Zuni, right across the wash, it didn't get as much moisture or stayed dry or something. It came back from the shrubs, so from the stems. So Crape Myrtles here, the trees don't really do well because every once in a while the winter causes them to reset back to ground. So they're true perennial. They'll come back every year, but really you're going for the shrub varieties of Crape Myrtles, not a tree variety, or you'll be disappointed either next winter or several winters soon to be. Yeah. Just don't pay that kind of money for a tree. Get a shrub. You'll be better. You'll have more success. Just insider tip.
That is true. You'd be much happier. So that's kind of the Crape Myrtles, which of course are starting to bloom right now. And then we have Hibiscus or Rose of Sharon. And a lot of those are starting to blossom at this point as well. And most of your Rose of Sharon can get quite large if you let them. Probably 6-8 feet if you were just to let them grow.
Maybe 10. I've seen them up 8-10 feet, but most people keep them trimmed back to that chest high level or so, like a lilac or something. That's that size.
Yeah, they don't mind being trimmed,
no.
shaped. They're perfectly fine with that. We have a Lavender Chiffon one that's absolutely gorgeous. So it's a double blossom on it, just a really nice lavenderish.
A blue
beautiful color.
Is it center blue or the whole thing, whole flower?
Whole flower.
Oh, that's kind of neat. Oh.
Yeah. It's just really pretty. Being that double flower, it just kind of really stands out. The other double one we have is called Blushing Bride.
Yeah, it's a classic hibiscus or Rose of Sharon. Yep.
And it's actually a light pink one, but just really kind of almost delicate looking. Really, really pretty. And then we have Summer Ruffle, which is kind of cool because Summer Ruffle is actually a variegated leaf, which you don't see very often in a hibiscus. So it's a cream color on the outside and then green more on the inside.
That's interesting, especially in a darker area. Or you got dark rock around. That would be super. That'd be a good-looking shrub. Yeah,
it's really pretty.
What color's the flower?
It's a dark pink to lavenderish color.
Oh, like a chartreuse kind of thing.
Chartreuse?
Or colors? I don't know. Maybe not. I'm a man. God only gave me 7 crayons.
Let me think about that.
What is the color? Periwinkle? Is that it? I don't know. Okay.
But I like the variegated. Variegated leaves tend to stand out in our environment because everything else is just so much one color kind of thing. So really, really pretty. So, and there again, hibiscus, rose of Sharon. We've probably got like 8 to 10 varieties in stock. So I'm sure we can find a color.
Hibiscus, the tropical one, doesn't grow here. If you're from Palm Springs, Southern Cal, Phoenix. But these Rose of Sharons, they are a hibiscus. We just call them Rose of Sharon, but their botanical is hibiscus. It does exceptionally well, and you can get that in tree form, shrub form. It goes down to minus 40 degrees. It's a really great plant for the mountains of Arizona. Be right back with Ken and Lisa Lane and the Mountain Gardeners.
Look for more tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts through Ken's website. Podcast the show, read his weekly garden column, or follow him on Facebook and Instagram at watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Hi, Waters with the plant of the week and our red cobweb hens and chicks.
Tiny rosettes are covered with crazy cobweb-like hairs, then open and spread to make a dense, succulent ground cover.
This drought-loving perennial flushes red in the spring with cactus pink flowers in the summer.
Perfect for planting in rock gardens, super attractive in containers, and just $14.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love crazy new succulents, they love to shop. Hi, Lisa with the plants of the week and our Goshiki Holly.
Goshiki translates from Japanese as holly with 5 colors. Its new leaves emerge red, then turn green.
The entire top of this holly is draped in colors of cream, white, gray, yellow, and green.
This evergreen makes the perfect accent, hedge, or evergreen container for its all-round good looks.
A really nice plant that shines through winter is just $39.
Waters Garden Center, where people who love Japanese gardens, they love to shop.
Welcome to the Mountain Gardener with Ken Lane. Gardening in the mountains is different. Listen to Ken's tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts guaranteed to make your gardens more beautiful than ever this year. Now for better advice that works locally, welcome your host, Ken Lane.
This is when your shade trees really are a game changer out in the yard. If you've got a patio that's just blistering hot, sun's coming in from the south or the west, and it's so hot you can't even enjoy the patio, you need a shade tree. If your driveway is so stinking hot, you hate to even park out there because your car just roasts. That's a place for a shade tree. If your west wall to your house, 2-story house, is just solid, not a window over there, just roasting, absorbing the heat of summer and then permeating through the walls and just keeps that part of the house hot, you need a shade tree. Let me go over some of the best varieties of shade trees and why. Just some select. And now's a good time to plant them. You just have to watch your watering. But most shade trees have a pretty large root structure, and they're very forgiving. So really, you can go 3, 4, 5 days between watering, and it's good. You just got to deep soak them and then water them. So to water every day a new tree, it would hate that. You need to water deep, then let it breathe. So it's really easy to take care of a new tree, a pine tree especially, a privacy screen, whatever that tree is, very easy to care for this time of year. Just don't overwater it. Water it deep. Here are some of my top, by no means all varieties. Don't have enough time for that. But I would really start with looking at maple trees. Maples adapt really well here in the mountains of Arizona. Not every maple. Japanese maple, no. First of all, it's a small tree. Doesn't make a good shade tree. But a flame maple grows native. It's a wild, low water use kind of tree. It's a smaller leaf maple, gets up about 15 feet tall, usually vase-shaped, multi-stemmed. Put that on the edge of your patio, and wow, you've almost got instant shade. Another one I've used frequently in that same small vein, purple leaf plums do well. Small catalpas do well. They stay in that under 20 foot tall, maybe 15 to 20 foot tall. So great for that patio, in trees, courtyards. You need some shade there. You don't want something too overpowering. It can be too much. I'll get to that in a second, the really big ones. Let's start with small, though. I would say crab apples. They bloom in these beautiful colors, I mean like red and purple, bright white. These are small trees up to about 15, 18 feet, kind of an umbrella shape, and they just bloom. They give great shade, and they got tremendous fall color. They've got a lot going for them. Then they lose their foliage, and they'll allow you to gain some solar heat in the winter, but now shades. Another one in that same vein as Crape Myrtles would be red buds. That's a drought hardy. There's a wild variety that grows in the mountains. It's a very tough plant for the mountains of Arizona. Gets up maybe 12 to 15 feet tall, so it's short. Doesn't overpower. Can grow in a container or in the ground. I think flowering cherries. And then the bigger one that's kind of like that would be Robinia or purple robe locust. It's been blooming blue, these big clusters of like grape clusters of flowers. They're blue to lavender to light pink colored. Very drought hardy. It grows up bigger though, probably 25, 30 feet tall. So it gets some size to it and equally as wide. So it's much larger. So now you're stepping out away from the house a little bit because this tree is going to get large. So give it some space to grow and then shade much more of that area out in the landscape. Purple robe locust, of course, the most famous local locust would be the golden honey locust. This is the one that's been gold or very bright yellow kind of flower. A finer leaf to it, more of an open canopy, filtered light, but tough as nails. You cannot kill a locust. I mean, if you travel, this is your second home, and you just want a tree you can plant out there and forget about it, and it's going to live, that's going to be golden locusts. Right now, they're starting to turn green. They'll just be this nice green, thick shade tree up to about 35 feet tall. And then it will turn gold again in the fall of the year, usually in October sometime. It just have this, again, has two bright gold seasons. The new growth is gold, and as the foliage drops, it's gold. And then it's got such a small leaf, it just blows away. You hardly have to rake. Or if it does get in your rock, you got lots of leaves in your rocks, that's when you just blow off. It just blows away, goes away. It's really easy to care for. So golden locust is a good choice. Then you go to more traditional shade trees. This would be like ash. There's Raywood ash, Modesto ash. There's even an Arizona ash. There's a native ash tree. Ashes are very tough. They naturalize very easy, very low care, but they have a denser foliage to them, denser canopy, so it's very thick shade underneath an ash. They'll get up to about, on average, 30 feet tall, something like that, maybe a little smaller for your Arizona ashes. Good medium-sized tree, thick foliage. Typically, ash has very good fall color, so bright golds, purples, oranges, very bright colored fall color, and it's a smaller leaf, easy to care for. That and the ash, they lose their leaves all at once. So it's not like you're picking up leaves from now through winter. I mean, they're going to take about 3 weeks, and they just all drop. You rake up, and you're done. So it's easier cleanup than some of the others. I would say maples, there are some larger maples. Of course, autumn blaze maple is the old-fashioned autumn blaze maple. It's been around for 20 years. Classic maple leaf, turns red in the fall. I mean, a bright red. I mean, a true red. There's silver maple, which is a maple leaf, but it turns gold, like aspen colored. So it depends on what color you want. There's State Street. It's a beautiful new maple we've introduced. It's got a cork bark to it. Stays narrow, but tall. So if you need a street tree, that's a great one for that. And then probably the number one seller out of all of them for not just shade, but privacy, I like aspens. We've got wild aspen groves, Aspen Creek. It's right here in Prescott. You could almost walk there. You've got aspens and Williams and Flagstaff and White Mountains. They just grow. They grow in the valleys. They grow in the hillsides. They grow wherever you've got it. Out in the 5,000 foot level and below, you probably ought to put them on a drip system because they won't want to naturalize as easily there. But classic white bark, trembling leaf, classic maple or aspen leaf to it, dense column shaped of shade. So Lisa and I, we're using that up on our west side wall to shade that wall because the property line between the houses is pretty tight. I didn't know if my neighbors wanted a shade tree. Some people go, get that tree. I don't want the tree touching my property line. Okay, Well, aspens do well for that. They don't take as much water as you think they do either. If you're going to kill an aspen, it'll be from overwatering. And that's one that you once a week, twice a week at most, is how much you need to give an aspen to really make it happy. And I would say if you're in that heavy clay soils of the valleys, the Pauldins, the Chino valleys, the Kirklands now towards the silt bottoms, those areas, they maybe once a week would do it for an aspen. A companion to that looks very similar from a distance, it's hard to tell, would be birch. Birch is actually a little bit tougher than aspens. They're longer lived, let's put it that way. They last longer than an aspen does. But it has that classic white bark. It's got that same smaller leaf that moves, kind of wisp in the wind. It's a good plant for the mountains of Arizona and adapts really well. It takes any kind of winter we have, takes the wind we have. It just adapts really well, a birch tree. And there's a wild variety. There's river birch that just grows wild throughout the north country of Arizona. So you know it's going to adapt well. Then you get into the really big boys. These are elms. Let me go over elms real quick. Don't plant a Siberian elm, not the weedy wild elms. They just get diseased. There's new varieties we're introducing that we've bred out all the disease, all the fungus, all the problems. So there's small-leafed elms like our Asian elms, and then there's Princeton elms, which are like the ones that are down around the courthouse of Prescott. These are the preferred elm trees. They're going to get up 40, 50, 60 feet tall. They're big. They're right up there with cottonwoods and willows and sycamores. These are plants that are big. I want a lot of shade. I want to hang a tree in a hammock from it when we're all done. That's the ones you want to go with. There's a whole series of shade trees here at the garden center. If you can't plant it, it's too hot, have your nursery plant it for you. They got crews out there that they'll just install it. Point, I want it right there, and it will be so. So it's pretty easy to make that whole thing go. Got Lisa Waterslane coming back in the studio. Be right back.
You're listening to local garden expert Ken Lane, the owner of Waters Garden Center. He can be found throughout the week at Waters Garden Center, located in Prescott at 1815 Iron Springs Road. Thanks for tuning in to The Mountain Gardener.
Hi, Waters with the plants of the week and our gold flame honeysuckle.
Wonderfully fragrant. These blooms are in full color right now and will stay that way until the first frost of October.
These pink and gold blooms are irresistible to hummingbirds and butterflies alike.
Excellent as a quick ground cover, but robust enough to climb vertical structures and fences, all for under $37.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love blooming vines, they love to shop.
Wondering why my garden looks amazing? Well, that's personal. The personal garden shopper service at Waters Garden Center, that is. Before talking with my personal shopper, I had no idea which plants would be best for me. But now my garden is bursting with flowers and buzzing with hummingbirds. Just go to watersgardencenter.com, click on Shop, and choose Personal Garden Shopper. A Waters Garden expert will pick the perfect plants for you, personally. The Personal Garden Shopper, only at Waters Garden Center in Prescott.
You've tuned in to The Mountain Gardener with local garden expert Ken Lane. Join him each week as he answers timely garden questions that are sure to make a difference in your gardens. Now welcome your host, Ken Lane.
As we transition to this summer time season, it is summer. We just passed our longest day of the year. So we're going to see some of the warmer temperatures, I hope. I love summer. It's my favorite season. I love to be warm. I love to go. I love to sweat. I'd rather sweat than shiver any day. I don't like the cold, and so it's been a cold spring. So I love it, and some of your plants love that too. So what you'll find is I cannot keep my pansies alive. Oh my gosh. I cannot keep my mustard and lettuce from bolting. I cannot keep, some things they're spring plants. You just can't water them enough. Let them go and replace them with some of your heat lovers. So portulacas. I was planting some pentas, this beautiful, large flower, must be 6 inches across, about a foot tall, in solid bloom, reds and pinks and whites and lots of colors. Loves the heat, looks delicate, but loves the heat. And butterflies, you're going to have butterflies when you put a penta in. I haven't had javelina issues with that one. Zinnias, for sure, love the summer, Animals don't bother it whatsoever. It blooms constantly right through fall. So zinnias are a great one. You don't have to start by seed. It's almost like starting backwards right now. You want to start with a plant that's in bloom and that keeps blooming for the next 3 months. So there's some summer plants like that we've stocked up with them. So your nurseries have shifted. There are no spring bloomers now. They've all shifted over to things that love the summer planting season. Now we're restocking on some of those borderline things. Petunias, geraniums. We just got a whole load of red geraniums. If your pots, your raised beds, your flowers have faded, you can replenish them with some bright, even brighter colors than the spring bloomers that love the heat. So we go over a lot of that with our classes that we hold every Saturday. So let me just go over the next couple of them that are coming up. Next week, July 6th, we'll be closed for July 4th. You just enjoy backyard parties with our family. So our garden, Waters Garden Center, will not be open July 4th, but July 5th and 6th we are. Well, on Saturday the 6th at 9:30, Lisa's going to teach a class, Containers That Bloom Like Crazy. We'll go over all of these flowers, the summer blooming flowers that just look great, and how to put them together. Now is a good time to plant fruit trees, grapes, and berries. We've got a class on July 12th at 3:30 in the afternoon. That's a Friday. How do you plant? What are companion plants? What kind of fruits can you grow here? What can you not grow? So we'll go over it in detail that Friday for an hour straight. Just you better bring a notepad and be ready to learn and absorb fast, because that's how fast it's going to be. All the details. And then July 20, it's Easy Grow Roses. Cheryl, my rose queen, she just knows roses like no one else. She's going to teach that class on how to have better, more, what varieties work best, what kind of foods do you use, what to look for, how to get them to bloom better, when do you prune them, all the details of roses. You'll be a rosarian when you get done with that class. And the last one in July, perennial flowers that impress with bloom. So perennials, those things that come back every year. So perennial and permanent both start with P. And so we'll go over the perennials you can plant now, because June is perennial month. June, just this summer season, they're all in bloom. They all look good. So take a look at that entire list at watersgardencenter.com. There's a big classes button right up front. Of course, throughout the week, Lisa and I camp out here at Waters Garden Center. We love talking to friends that listen to the show, that come in, and we'd love to hear the accolades. And then if you need some help, we're here to help you kind of garden right, so you're going in the right direction, not go backwards, but always going forward, at least here at Waters Garden Center. Hi, Ken here with the plants of the week and our pink volcano phlox.
Just when spring flowers are fading, these beauties revive and show off.
Your grandmother only dreamed of growing a pretty pink phlox this fine.
Each flower cluster could make a bridal bouquet all by itself.
This new volcano series is erupting with flowers used to accent entries and fountains, all for $15.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott. For people who love eruptions of pink flowers, they love to shop. Hi, Lisa here with the plants of the week and our Lavender Chiffon Hibiscus.
This hardy variety is one of the longest blooming, most prolific shrubs, showing off massive 4-inch lavender flowers all summer long.
This stately bush likes to show off, and all for $39.
But wait, there's more. These pretty shrubs come back again next year with even more stunning beauty.
Waters Garden Center, 1815 Iron Springs Road in Prescott, where people who love stunning hibiscus, they love to shop. If you want a more fruitful garden, increased success in your landscape that just feels better, then tune in every week to The Mountain Gardener. Years of tips, tricks, and garden shortcuts are guaranteed to make your gardens nicer than ever. Listen to this podcast or read Ken's weekly garden column by visiting watersgardencenter.com. That's Waters with 2 T's, gardencenter.com. Thanks for tuning in.